Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We have good and I think two crazy martinis, but the middle one could certainly be bad too when you consider the one person out of the loop in the Biden administration on a key story is Biden himself. So let's move to our good martini now, Jim. And we haven't talked about Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin in a little while. We certainly talked about him a lot in January and February when the big dust-up over masks was happening as it related to Virginia schools and him getting legislation in place to give parents the option. A few weeks after that, it seemed to just kind of domino effect to all sorts of other places, and mask wearing became optional. And then, of course, we had the court ruling on transportation this week, which we'll talk about in the second martini. But Glenn Youngkin is doing more good things. This is courtesy of KPVI. A new law signed by Governor Glenn Youngkin will prevent police departments from enacting arrest quotas, which one sponsor believes will ensure police arrest people for the right reasons. House Bill 750 and Senate Bill 327, both signed by the governor, will prohibit police departments from establishing formal arrest quotas or maintaining informal arrest quotas. Such quotas would encourage police officers to secure a certain number of arrests in a given time frame. Delegate Robert Bell, Republican of Albemarle County, who was a sponsor of the House version, said, quote, "This was an effort by numerous groups and people who said you shouldn't have a formal or informal quota." He said these decisions should be based solely on what is best for safety. He said police should not be forced to arrest people for other reasons. The legislation received unanimous bipartisan support in both chambers of the General Assembly. So, Jim, it's certainly been urban legend for a long time in different parts of the country. I don't know how much of a hard and fast rule it was that, state troopers, if it's the beginning of the month or the end of the month, be careful how fast you're going because they might be behind on their quota. So whether it's formal or informal, it seems like a really bad idea. If the person needs to be arrested because they committed a crime worthy of arrest them. If not, don't arrest them. But common sense stuff like this that gets a broad base of support, good move.
I was going to say, if you've ever gotten a speeding ticket on the 28th, 29th, 30th, or 31st day of the month, you've probably been frustrated. You may have felt like you were going, yes, officer, I was going a little over the limit, but I don't think I was going excessively beyond the limit. We all know that people going 56 in a 55 zone do not get parking tickets. And you may start to wonder, if this had been the middle of the month, would I have still gotten the ticket, or would he have let me off with a warning, or let me go past? Particularly when all the sheer number of vehicles going at well beyond the posted speed limit, and you're simply trying to keep up with the pace of traffic. What the actual speed limit is kind of this guessing game. Is it 5 miles over the limit? Is it 10 miles over the limit? Is it 15? My sense has always been 10 or less, you're probably going to get away with it. More than that, you're going to. But you think about it, whether or not you're breaking the law really shouldn't be such a gray area. It really shouldn't be the sort of situation in which, one person doing it on one day isn't really a crime, but another person doing it on another day is a crime. Now, I'd always heard about this, and it seemed like this was a revenue issue. The idea that if you are in a particular jurisdiction and part of the way they make money is through people paying fines for speeding, well, it's getting towards the end of the month. You better catch some guys. Better bust them, even if they're going only a few miles over the limit, because we got to make quota, et cetera, et cetera. The idea of an arrest warrant, like, what do you do if your policies are working and crimes go down?
Right.
Better, quick, jaywalker, get him. What are you doing? Where you like, oh my God, we have to arrest 15 people this month. It's either it's written or maybe it's kind of informal. But if we show up with only 13 or 14 arrests, people are going to think we're doing a really bad job. So we better go out and start arresting people. That is a kind of ludicrous application of this, and completely contrary to the concept of the rule of law. I think we all believe in clarity. If the person broke the law, they should be arrested. If they did not break the law, they should be arrested. And we don't like the idea of this fuzzy middle period. Yes, there's always been a concept of prosecutorial discretion. Yes, the cop can always, has the option of letting you off with a warning if he genuinely thinks you're all right. You just weren't, didn't realize how fast you were going, and you're trying to pick up your kid from daycare or something. Not that I'm describing anything that's happened to me. That sort of thing. But anyway, this seems very, common sense. It's hard to believe this would have any bad consequences for law enforcement or for crime enforcement. And just as there was this gradually increasing hostility to red light cameras, and people started noticing that more and more jurisdictions were treating them as a revenue source and not as an actual traffic safety source. This is purely common sense. Good job, Glenn Youngkin. By the way, I saw on the op-ed page of the Washington Post today, a tyrant's playbook in Virginia. Mr. Youngkin takes his culture war too far. I guess he's also at war with the police because he's requiring them to have actually good reason to arrest people and no quotas and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I tell you that Glenn Youngkin, he contains multitudes.
If he holds any cultural positions that are conservative, his culture war, according to these people, will have gone on too far. But you make a very good point. If you want to build trust between the community and the law enforcement, have consistent standards on what involves an arrest and what doesn't. Obviously, circumstances can be a little bit different from case to case, but in the end, consistency will breed trust, I believe. So good on Glenn Youngkin and good on the legislature for coming together in an overwhelming margin to do that, and hopefully it's enforceable as well. All right. In the meantime, you can still get a phenomenal deal on your 6-piece MyPillow towel set. And you're going to want to do that because nothing beats the feel of a great towel when you step out of the shower. Big, soft, thick, fluffy, gets you dry super quick. And right now, still the great deal at MyPillow. You can get the 6-piece towel set, regularly $109.99 for just $39.99 a set.
And in fact, you can be patriotic when you do it because the cotton used in the MyPillow 6-piece towel set is grown right here in the United States. Now, some other towels might feel good, but they don't absorb very well. Or maybe they absorb, but they don't feel good on your skin. They've got that lotiony feel. Well, every MyPillow towel is made from proprietary technology that makes them highly absorbent and soft to the touch. Every set comes with 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. They're available in a variety of colors and sizes. They're machine washable, and they have a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 1-year limited warranty.
For a limited time, get the MyPillow 6-piece towel set. Again, regularly $109.99 for just $39.99 with the promo code Martini. Visit mypillow.com/martini or call 800-874-0104. You'll also find deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow mattress topper, MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets, and so much more. Get your 6-piece MyPillow towel set for only $39.99 today at mypillow.com/martini or call 800-874-0104, mypillow.com/martini. All right, Jim, we talked yesterday about a Twitter site making a difference and the Washington Post's apoplectic response to that. Another Twitter account that you and I look at a lot is RNC Research. I don't know exactly who's running it, but if it's making a difference politically, I'm sure Taylor Lorenz will get right on that and give out their personal information and so forth. But yesterday they had this great tweet with the audio of 3 different figures from the Biden administration reacting to the federal judge's decision earlier in the week to lift the mask mandate on transportation, planes, airports, buses, trains, metro, what have you, Ubers even. And so the question was, is this administration going to challenge that ruling? So RNC Research has Jen Psaki on the plane at 1 o'clock, Biden on the ground in New Hampshire at 2 o'clock, and HHS Secretary Javier Becerra at 3 o'clock. And listen to these competing reactions to what is going to happen now with masks.
The CDC continues to advise and recommend masks on airplanes. We're abiding by the CDC recommendations. The president is, and we would advise all Americans to do that.
People continue to wear masks on planes.
That's up to them.
We are right now in the process of deciding, and we likely will appeal that ruling.
So Biden says it's up to them, meaning, it's voluntary. If you want to wear them, go ahead. If not, then you don't have to. Jen Psaki obviously thought that you should. Javier Becerra indicates, I think we're going to challenge this. And then we find out that the Justice Department is, in fact, challenging this. They're not going to ask for a stay on the ruling, so you can still make up your own mind while this is being challenged in court. But, Jim, not exactly a consistent message from this administration, and perhaps most disturbing, the one who was most clueless was the president himself.
Yeah, I went back and forth with Tom Nichols earlier today when I wrote about this in the Morning Jolt. So, first of all, I think it's safe to say that most Americans are tired of wearing masks. It's now been well more than 2 years. If you were at a hospital or doctor's office and there were people who are particularly high risk for, COVID-19, then okay, maybe it's a different story. But by and large, it doesn't make any sense for the current policy, which is that right now, certain airports like the one in Philadelphia International Airport, are saying, well, you still have to wear your mask because of a local ordinance. What the FAA and all these federal authorities are saying doesn't matter because we still have the local authority to do this. If you're in the New York City area, you still have to wear masks on the subways. But if you're commuting into New Jersey, and once you get onto New Jersey Transit, you no longer have to wear a mask. I think we can all recognize this is silly. This is ridiculous. It doesn't. It's not like the virus is only on one, mass transit system or is only in certain airports or something like that. I went through all the statistics. I went through all the cases of. Basically, there's been a very small increase in cases in DC, maybe an uptick from the immediate post Omicron wave lows, but we're talking, minuscule increases, and certainly not something that should have us rushing to the public health equivalent of DEFCON 1 again. Then I would describe going to a store in Southwest Washington over the weekend. It was at Politics and Prose. It's I think it's run by lefties, but it's generally, I love bookstores, almost always go to them. And they had a sign that said, you must wear a mask in this store. Now, they have them to give away, and I had one in my car, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just not dealing with it. I'm not going to go in. And maybe they lost a sale because I'm really bad at resisting the temptation to purchase the book. But it's a free country. The District of Columbia allows businesses to set their own policies, and if they want customers to wear a mask, fine. That's fine. Go ahead. I'm just not going to shop there because there are a lot of bookstores here in Virginia where I don't have to do that, and it just turns into a hassle. If it was conditions like pre-vaccinations, if it was pre-boosters, all that kind of stuff, fine. If the staff wants to wear a mask, go right ahead. Be my guest. But you want me to do it? No, sorry, I'm just not going to do it. I have options. I'm going to use those other options. And I think more and more Americans are in that mindset here. Now, the other aspect of this, which is frustrating, is Joe Biden being asked, and by the way, the question clearly was, should Americans wear masks? It was not, what should the FAA do? Not what should the CDC do? What should the Department of Justice do? What should the Supreme Court do? Technically, Biden's they could be, but it was pretty clear. He was asked about the American people. The they he's referring to refers to, do what they want. And it is not the first case. In fact, it's now, I feel like these cases are coming more frequently on top of, for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. And what Russia is doing is committing genocide, where we've had White House staffers come out and say, well, actually, technically, no, it's not that. What the president said is the policy of this administration is the exact opposite of what the president just said. And it's turning into a frustrating, ridiculous policy. I'm sure they could say, when Biden said the American people should decide for themselves, he was speaking from the heart, Greg. As we all know, when you speak from the heart, you lie. Or you say the exact opposite of what is true.
Yeah, so when Biden speaks from his heart, he's not reflecting policy, because we never actually create policy based on what you truly believe. So.
He's kind of this pundit or something. He's like this outside observer to the administration who just kind of rattles off what he thinks, and some days it lines up with the administration. A lot of days it doesn't. It doesn't set policy. It's not like he's the decider, as George W. Bush described himself. He's just some guy who runs along and talks about this sort of thing, but who in the end really doesn't decide what federal policies ought to be. No, sorry. It's just, it's guessing. He's just kind of rambling, guessing. Grandpa gets confused. And sometimes it relates to what the policies are going to be. But a lot of days it's just some guy saying stuff. Nobody really cares. Nobody really pays attention. It's Grandpa. He always goes off on these rambling stories.
Jim, I also noticed that the Democrats and the Biden administration did not take your advice to just accept this as being thrown in the briar patch and let the thing expire. Yeah. And then if anything bad happens, blame somebody else for it. But nope. They got to keep fighting.
I mean, at this point, it's like you might as well just come out and say, okay, let's go out. We will do everything we can to keep you in masks.
Right.
If you want more masks, America, vote for the Democrats. Just let Biden let it all out.
All right, let's move on to our third martini, our second crazy. And Jim, Adam Kinzinger, we've talked about him before with a heavy eye roll, which is hard to tell when it's an audio podcast, but You can hopefully tell in the tone of our voice that Adam Kinzinger has kind of turned into a one-issue guy. He's not running for re-election again to the House. He says he's just tired of Washington. I'm sure the fact that the Democrats completely gerrymandered him out of his district had nothing to do with that decision. But he's not running for the House again. He had been allegedly rumored to be considering a run for governor. Didn't do that. Not running for Senate. So what's he going to do next? He might run for president, he tells the Huffington Post. He says, I look at it this way. I'll make a decision when we get there. If there's a need and a desire, it's truly not anything I'm planning right now, but I'm not going to rule it out, he said, his voice rising in such a way at the end that suggested that this was supposed to be the main takeaway. Look, if we're in a position, if it's just terrible candidates and the country's in a worse place, maybe, but there's no grand plan right now. And then the reporter says, I asked Kinzinger whether he wants to run against Trump, who is expected to mount a third campaign for president. Quote, I would love it. I really would, he said, his eyes instantly widening. Even if he crushed me like in a primary, to be able to stand up and call out the garbage is just a necessary thing, regardless of who it is. I think it'd be fun. So, Jim, it looks possible that in 2024, the role of Joe Walsh will be played by Adam Kinzinger.
Yeah, if he says if there's a need, it's really hard to imagine a scenario where there's a need for Adam Kinzinger to run for president. And I'm going to say this I could say this with disdain, but I'm just going to observe that, look, the future is always in motion. It's possible something could change, Heaven forbid Donald Trump has a heart attack or something like that. I do not want to see something like that happen. But by and large, based on what we know now, Trump has every intention of running for president again. The only guy who I could see taking it from him, and I'm not even going to say this is a likely scenario, but the guy who's been mentioned most often as a potential competitor is Ron DeSantis. Right now, it looks like he's going to get reelected in Florida, probably by a really healthy margin. He's gotten a lot of national headlines. A decent number of people who voted for Trump twice, who talk to me, know my opinion of him. I suppose they could be telling me what I want to hear. But generally, they say stuff like, look, I voted for Trump twice, but I'd really like to move on. We need Trump without the circus. We need Trump without all the distractions or something like that. And when they look at Ron DeSantis, they see that. They see somebody who gives them either the same or the approximate same as all of Trump's strengths without all of Trump's weaknesses. And he isn't going to spend the campaign ranting about 2020 and Venezuelan hackers and the election was stolen and stuff like that. So I think if you really don't want to see Trump being the Republican nominee in 2024, you really should be leading the Ron DeSantis fan club. I have not seen most of the people who let's just say made a profession out of opposing Donald Trump, since 2016. The Mark Sanfords of the world, I think Kinzinger fits in this category. I would say technically Jen Rubin, but it's hard. People have a hard time remembering she was ever a Republican or a right of center. But the people who are really, really the people at the Bulwark, for example, by and large, if they've ever written a nice thing about Ron DeSantis, I've missed it. Right? They are not Ron DeSantis fans. You're not going to. I think Larry Hogan in Maryland is doing a pretty good job as governor out there, but he's not going to walk in and win the Republican nomination. I'm sorry. Just you got to deal with the reality here. There is no. You can be the Mark Sanford. You can be the Joe Walsh. You can be the I am the Republican for Republicans who hate Donald Trump. And that is, if you're lucky, 10% of the primary voters these days. I just don't see I don't see that expanding to 50% plus one or any larger chunk if you are unless you are a rock-ribbed, indisputable conservative. If you want to have somebody else besides Trump to be the nominee, then you need to be both a conservative. You need to be good on television. You need to have a whole bunch of good qualities. And you probably need a way to make Trump voters to say, well, I like Trump, but I kind of like what that guy's doing over there, too. He kind of reminds me of Trump in the good ways. So, could DeSantis do that? I don't know. It's a little, I'm not saying it's an easy shot, but I think it's a plausible shot. Much more plausible than Kinzinger. So I really haven't seen anything what is the scenario where the only way Kinzinger can be a factor is that if it is a close race and that Kinzinger effectively plays the John Kasich role, in which he gets into the race and he splits the anti-Trump vote. Because let's face it, Trump. There's a good chunk of Trump voters who are going to stick with him no matter what he does, no matter how much he says about 2020 election, no matter how crazy his stuff gets. They're going to stick with him. So if you want somebody else besides Trump to be the nominee, you got to get as many people unified behind one alternative as possible. And I'm telling you now, that alternative is not going to be Adam Kinzinger. It's also not going to be Larry Hogan. I think Liz Cheney's getting a lot of grief that she doesn't deserve, but no, it's not going to be her. It's going to have to be somebody who's just Trumpy enough to make Trump supporters say, maybe I like that guy. Right now, I think DeSantis is the best shot. There are a couple other people who I think would be good national candidates. Greg Abbott in Texas. I think Tim Scott of South Carolina is a guy I've wanted to run for president for a long time. I think he's terrific. Maybe some of these, but right now these guys aren't making a lot of noise about running. I think these guys are all relatively young, and I'm sure a bunch of them could say, you know what? Either 2028, we're either going to have a Republican president, and things will be great, or in 2028, there will be an open slot. Trump will not be running, and I'll be able to run, in a much better political environment without the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So that's where it stands. And so I have no idea what Adam Kinzinger thinks he's going to do, unless he wants to form some super PAC and go on, what I was describing in 2016 as these, high profile book tours that are disguised as presidential campaigns.
Jim, we are done for the day. Let's do it again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Also, thank you so much for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday, and please join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
This week on the Federalist Radio Hour. A lot of people have theories about the so-called sex recession, which is actually pretty well established at this point, at least with, millennials and now with Gen Z. They're just generally lower risk takers. It's actually pretty amazing. Like even getting driver's licenses at lower rates. There's all kinds of stuff going on there.
I'm Emily Jashinsky of The Federalist. Subscribe to The Federalist on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.